I'm here to teach you guys the most important things in life. Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree, boss lore. I've done nothing besides study the Erdtree and study the Scadutree for weeks now. Weeks. And in return, we have this boss ranking. Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree, an expansion to a game that many would consider, including myself, the best game of all time. We waited 2 long years for From Software's triumphant return to Elden Ring, and boy, did they deliver. This expansion is not only a masterpiece, but it literally shattered my expectations. Today, I'm going to rank the top main bosses within Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree. I'm going to rank them off lore, difficulty, and art direction, and give you my reasons why. I really hope you guys stacked up on Scadu fragments. Who's going to claim the top spot? Well, let's find out. Again, these coffins hurt my back. Time to head back to the land of shadows. Whee! This goes without saying, but spoilers ahead. Number 11, Commander Gaius. Messmer the Impaler's right-hand man, and the leader of his ground forces in the lands of shadow. Commander Gaius can be seen riding a gigantic savage boar named Gaia around the grounds of the Shadow Keep, hoping to stop the Tarnished from entering the Shadow Keep and challenging his longtime friend Messmer for his kindling. When the Tarnished first stumbles upon Commander Gaius, it's at the Shadow Keep's back gate. The surrounding grounds are covered with weapons of those that have challenged Gaius throughout the years and have lost, and he's seen charging at the Tarnished from beyond a gigantic archway. But what fascinates me the most, though, about Gaius, is what's found beyond this archway at the Albernorc shack. Once the Tarnished defeats Gaius and travels towards this shack, he'll be attacked by a wolf-riding Albernorc wearing prank pants that supposedly belongs to Commander Gaius. It's stated on these pants that Commander Gaius is of Albernorc extraction, meaning Gaius or his family is of Albernorc descent. It's my thinking that this Albernorc shack is actually where Gaius lived while patrolling the grounds of the Shadow Keep, and that Albernorc wolf rider that you see wearing Gaius' pants is most likely his wife or a family member of some kind. Lore-wise, it's stated in-game on Gaius' helm that Gaius was once a senior disciple under a stone-skinned alabaster lord that taught him, Radahn, and his boar Gaia gravitational magic and techniques in their younger years. It's said that Gaius and Radahn even carried a rivalry for many years that was competitive in nature, but ultimately were great friends and embraced the competition, with Messmer honoring both Gaius and Radahn with the titles of elder brothers, solidifying the bond between the three. Number 10, Divine Beast Dancing Lion. This boss is the visual and metaphorical representation of an actual divine beast that was used to perform the ritual of the lion dance at the Tower Festival at Bayle Tower Settlement. Initially, I thought that Divine Beast Dancing Lion was a grafted abomination, much like Godric the Grafted of Stormvale Castle, but much to my surprise, it's actually only 2 separate individuals who make up the dancing lion under its cloak. One controlling the head, the other controlling the body. It's my understanding that these individuals were known as sculpted keepers, and their bodies were inhabited by the spirit of the divine beast. It's stated on the Enraged Divine Beast Talisman that the divine beasts were once thought to be messengers of the heavens, with their rage amid battle mirroring the frantic nature of the skies, explaining why they have tremendous supernatural powers that can harness the weather. It's my understanding that when Messmer the Impaler and his army transcended upon Bayle Tower Settlement, that the divine beast started using the lion dance for martial reasons, helping them in battle against Messmer's forces. It's stated on the Divine Beast Tornado incantation that a majority of the divine beasts were gored and hung up on Messmer's spears, and then burned with his flames, stating that those who witnessed the atrocities compared it to a funeral engulfed with flames, but for the entirety of Bayle Tower instead. Yeah, that's a pretty shitty way to go out. Many years later, as the Tarnished transcends Bayle Tower, he's met face to face with the Divine Beast Dancing Lion. The Hornset Grandam's prayer asks the Outer Gods to once again give life to the Sculpted Keepers, to help cleanse the tower of its opposition, awakening the beast and ensuring a battle between the two. Once the Tarnished eventually defeats Dancing Lion, he'll drop his ritualistic headwear that offers special bonuses to the Tarnished, such as a hefty increase to strength and dexterity. Yeah, that's right, I'm talking about a +4 in each. As well as some minor decreases to the Tarnished's flask consumption and eyesight. It's said that only the finest sculpted keepers wear this headgear, stating that those that do no longer respond to the Hornset Woman's prayer once called upon, making it truly fascinating, because this could imply a mental connection between the 2 sculpted keepers that form each divine beast, with the backside being the lesser of the 2 since they lack access to the headpiece. but be sure to let me know in the comments section what you guys think about this. Number 9. Scadutree Avatar. Much like the Erdtree Avatar from the base game, the Scadutree from the Lands of Shadow also has an avatar protecting its base, but this time, it's in the form of a blackened sunflower covered in thorns. The Scadutree Avatar is more humanoid in nature, with a perceived head and arms, and intersecting vines scattered all throughout its body. It's some strange shit, but that's why I love it. By far the most fascinating aspect of the Scadutree Avatar's appearance, though, is its ability to transform from its sunflower appearance and mimic the appearance of the actual Scadutree. Which, by the way, that art direction blew my mind on a first-time playthrough. Lore-wise, not much is known about the Scadutree Avatar's origin, but many seem to think that it was born sometime around the creation of the Erdtree and its shadow. And to me, that makes perfect sense. On the remembrance of the Shadow Sunflower, it states that when the Scadutree was born, that it had no sense of order, leaving it in a twisted and brittle state, explaining why the Scadutree Avatar looks as it does. As the Tarnished approaches the Shadow Keep for the first time though, we're informed that a Great Rune has been broken, with that Great Rune belonging to Miquella, thus lifting Miquella's enchantment upon his followers. Now, up until this fight with the Scadutree Avatar, we were left to speculate where we would find Miquella's broken Great Rune, but to much surprise, was acquired by the Tarnished only after finding and then defeating the Scadutree Avatar. It's never really specified in game how the Avatar got in possession of the Great Rune in the first place, but it's implied that sometime after Miquella broke his own Great Rune, that he threw that Great Rune down to the base of the Scadutree, thus being scooped up by the Scadutree Avatar in the process. Finally, I have one more theory related to the Scadutree Avatar's rebirth mechanic mid-fight. As you might know, the Scadutree Avatar comes back to life 2 times during this fight with the Tarnished, with each time becoming more aggressive, but appearing with less health. It's my thought that after being defeated by the Tarnished, that the spirit of the Avatar would eventually carry on to another sunflower at the base of the Scadutree, creating another Scadutree Avatar in the process. Number 8. Rellana, Twin Moon Knight. A former princess of the Carian royal family, and the sister of Rellana from Elden Ring's base game, it's stated on Rellana's Twin Moon sorcery that in childhood, Rellana and Rellana were decently close, even discovering and meeting the twin moons together that were said to overlap as if they're resting against one another. It's even stated in-game on Rellana's helm that Rellana was gifted her lustrous black hair from her sister Rellana, insinuating that at one point in their lives that they had a deep bond. One thing that I find fascinating though, is that it stated on Count Ymir's High Priest hat that he was in fact the one that instructed Rellana in the sorceress arts, but eventually turned his back on Caria and his allegiance to the moon. Simultaneously, Rellana also eventually turned her back on Caria as she got older, and even took it as far as renouncing her heritage to side with Messmer the Impaler, whom she was madly in love with. According to Rellana's remembrance, Messmer knew full well that not even the brilliance of the moon, with Rellana at his side, would grant him any sort of relief from his hardships, but Rellana stayed at his side regardless, eventually earning the nickname of Sword of Messmer. Combat-wise, it's stated on the Carian thrusting shield that back when Rellana was still trying to show allegiance to the Erdtree, that she would use the Carian thrusting shield during ritualistic combat, but ultimately it wasn't a great fit for her. Currently, Rellana uses twin blades that deal magic and fire damage, symbolizing the coming together of moon and flame. By the time the Tarnished encounters Rellana at Castle Ensis, she's a master of moon and flame magic, and is the last line of defense for Castle Ensis, hoping to stop the Tarnished from reaching the Shadow Keep and confronting Messmer on his search for Miquella the Kind. It's my theory that Rellana was placed as the head of Castle Ensis by Messmer, in hopes of using the neighboring castles and fortresses as fortification for the Shadow Keep. Number 7. Putrescent Knight. Now, for one of the coolest bosses on this list, when the Tarnished fell to the depths of the Stone Coffin Fissure, he was confronted by the Putrescent Knight. It's stated in-game on the Putrescent Knight's remembrance that the Knight was created when the dead and decaying flesh of the Knight began to absorb St. Trina's nectar, granting the Knight eternal rest. As a way to thank St. Trina, the Knight swore allegiance to serve and protect St. Trina for all of eternity. It's my understanding that when the Tarnished fell to the depths of the Stone Coffin Fissure, that the Putrescent Knight mistakenly assumed that they were there to kill St. Trina, immediately leading to a battle between the two warriors. What I find to be the most fascinating aspect of this encounter, though, is the Knight's Putrescent Cleaver that you obtain after defeating the Knight, and turning its remembrance to the Round Table Hold. If we take a closer look, you can see that the Putrescent Cleaver is covered in human skulls and bones, and is most likely also fused with dead and decaying skin and St. Trina's nectar holding it together, which in my opinion is most likely confirmed by its ability to deal magic damage. What really has me stumped though, is why the Putrescent Cleaver deals with the Frost status effect instead of Eternal Sleep or even Ghost Flame. I assume the Frost damage is because of the Cold Dead that's infused within the weapon, but its absence of sleep has definitely piqued my interest. But be sure to let me know in the comments section what you guys think about this. Number 6. Romina, Saint of the Bud. The Guardian to the Church of the Bud, and the Weaver of Scarlet Rot. Perhaps the most interesting aspect of Romina's story is the fact that she wasn't always a human/insect hybrid. In fact, originally, Romina was just a normal saint, who used the Church of the Bud to pray to the outer gods. It's stated in-game on Romina's remembrance, and in the original story trailer for Shadow of the Erdtree, that at some point, the Church of the Bud was burned down by Messmer the Impaler when he was waging war across the lands of Shadow, leaving it in a crumbling state of flame and ash. Heartbroken, Romina made her way to the center of the Church of the Bud, as flames fell all around her, perhaps a prey to the outer gods, with none to hear her cries besides the outer god of Rot. Within the ash before her laid a bud. Within this bud was the divine element of the Scarlet Rot, which Romina used to help weave into what we currently know as Scarlet Rot today. It's stated on Romina's pole blade of the bud that when Romina originally found the bud, that she stared at it in silence for quite a while, before eventually deciding to make it her blade. As time went on and years eventually passed, Romina's entire physical appearance got overtaken with Scarlet Rot, making her grow into a parasitic creature that spread Scarlet Rot across the lands of Shadow. Fast forward to current day, and we have the Tarnished getting attacked by Romina as he enters the Church of the Bud. It's my theory that Romina wanted to stop the Tarnished from burning the Sealing Tree because of internal grief from the burning of the Church of the Bud, and the fact that the Tarnished was in possession of Messmer's kindling, perhaps trying to stop another one of Messmer's warriors from inflicting similar pain upon her again. Combat-wise, I find it interesting that Romina is weak to fire damage. It could be because she's half human, half insect, but I'm under the impression that when Messmer burned down the Church of the Bud, that it left Romina with a deep phobia of fire, making her backstory have a deeper impact, lore-wise. And over here, we love that shit. Number 5. Bayle the Dread. The forefather of the lesser dragons, known as the Drakes, and one of the eldest dragons to inhabit the lands of Shadow. Reputation-wise, Bayle is considered the vilest and most foul dragon to ever exist, being described as the bringer of havoc and destruction everywhere he goes. It's my understanding that Bayle attempted to dethrone Dragonlord Placidusax, as well the Dragonlord, and claim that title for himself, leading to a violent battle between the two legendary dragons. When it was all said and done, Bayle was able to harm Dragonlord Placidusax, but ultimately was badly beaten in the end. Appearance-wise, Dragonlord Placidusax ended up losing his third head during this fight with Bayle, but it was Bayle the Dread that suffered the most loss. Placidusax tore off both of Bayle's hands, leaving only stubs, shredded his wings and body pretty badly, and ripped off one of his legs. Which is crazy to me, because Bayle moves around more than Elden Beast. Ultimately, Bayle and his entire lineage of Drakes were forced to flee to the lands of Shadow, seemingly ran off, and banished by Dragonlord Placidusax, bringing us forward to current day. Bayle the Dread and his entire lineage of Drakes now live inside a jagged peak inside the lands of Shadow. It's said that a Drake warrior named Aigon became obsessed with killing Bayle after he lost his legs, and became paralyzed while fighting him, swearing vengeance upon Bayle after suffering a major defeat. Eventually, Aigon asked the Tarnished to help in defeating Bayle, handing over Aigon's furrowed finger, which he tore off himself, and asking the Tarnished to use the furrowed finger to summon his spirit mid-battle, thus granting his life's wish and using his legs again, and claiming his greatest prize, Bayle's heart. After the victory over Bayle, the Tarnished visited the last known location of Aigon, and discovered that he passed away, but found his armor set and Aigon's great bow left behind. It's my thought that Aigon knew that when he would be summoned, that it would be the last thing his human body could withstand, making this encounter with Bayle the Dread his last and final stand before dying, in which he died satisfied, knowing that he succeeded. Number 4. Metyr, Mother of Fingers. This multi-fingered abomination is the direct descendant and daughter of the Greater Will, a mysterious unseen entity or force whose allegiance lies with the Golden Order. It's stated on Metyr's remembrance that she's the mother of all Two Fingers and Finger Creepers, as well as the first shooting star to fall upon the lands between, descending from a rift in the cosmos to carry out the Greater Will's wishes. It's stated on the Staff of the Great Beyond that Metyr used the microcosm on the tip of her tail fingers to communicate with the Greater Will, acting as some type of portal or telephone to the cosmos. And in fact, it's actually her tail fingers and microcosm that makes up the entirety of this staff. It's said that while Metyr was waiting for a response from the Greater Will on what to do next on their behalf, that the microcosm on the tip of her tail fingers eventually broke, severing her communication with the Greater Will, effectively being abandoned in the process. Hi, is this Child Protective Services? It's my understanding that as time went on, Metyr still had hope that her parent, the Greater Will, would still contact her again someday, but sadly, that day never came. Likewise, on the Gazing Finger colossal weapon, it stated that the weapon was formed from another part of Metyr's body, her head, stating that the small wart-like eye you can see in the center of her head's fingerprint can actually see into the great beyond. By far the most fascinating aspect of Metyr's lore, though, involves Count Ymir and the Sword Hands of Night, Jolan and Anna. When the Tarnished first stumbled upon the cathedral of Manus Metyr, he's introduced to Count Ymir and his sword hand, Jolan. As the Tarnished approaches Count Ymir on his throne, though, he offers the Tarnished the Hold Laden necklace, and sends him on a quest to ring 3 bells that lay within 3 separate finger ruins to have an audience with Metyr, the Mother of Fingers. After ringing the second bell and returning to Count Ymir for the third and final location, Ymir can be found holding a small finger creeper, who Ymir refers to as Yuri, which I found super interesting, because upon exploring the graveyard at Manus Metyr, you'll see that one of the tombstones refers to a Yuri, stating that he was a beloved child and was taken before his time. It's my thinking that at one point Yuri was Count Ymir's human child that died by unknown circumstances, and all these years battling grief and obsessing over the Mother of Fingers deteriorated his mental health, which would explain why he confused the small finger creeper as his child. After some time searching for the third and final finger ruins, and upon returning to Manus Metyr, the Tarnished will find that the throne that once sat Count Ymir has now moved, revealing a ladder that leads to the final finger ruins. When dropping down the ladder and approaching the final bell, the Tarnished gets invaded by the Sword Hand of Night Anna, Sword Hand Jolan's sister. It's stated on Jolan and Anna's spirit ash that they were both born in a cold dark jail, where they were raised deprived of light, and it's inside this jail where they sharpen their skills, becoming masters of their blades and the Sword Hands of Night. Unbeknownst to Jolan, her master Count Ymir turned her sister Anna into a doll, because she was weaker mentally from years of being imprisoned inside the jail, and had used her summons to attack the Tarnished on his behalf. It's my understanding that Jolan was unaware of this fact, and when the Tarnished confronts her about it, she seems surprised. Count Ymir admired the Mother of Fingers so much that it grew to become a sick obsession, and ultimately replaced Metyr as the Mother of Fingers himself. It's my opinion that since Count Ymir has poor mental health, that he couldn't decide if he wanted to protect Metyr or kill her and replace her as the Mother of Fingers, leading him to attack the Tarnished before the final finger ruins. After defeating Metyr and returning to the Cathedral of Manus Metyr, we're confronted by Swordhand Jolan and Count Ymir, imitating the Mother of Fingers, showing his true intentions, and even had a fake replica of the Staff of the Great Beyond, called the Maternal Staff. It's stated on this staff that Count Ymir made himself a Mother of Fingers, and even wanted tail fingers of his own. Also, the crystal ball on the top of the staff is reminiscent of Metyr's microcosm, but doesn't actually communicate with the Greater Will. After defeating Count Ymir, Mother of Fingers, and traveling back towards the graveyard, you'll find the Cherishing Fingers sorcery that belonged to Count Ymir on Yuri's grave, a sorcery that surrounds the caster with multiple fingers protruding from the ground, and harming whoever gets close to the caster. Lore-wise, it's never really specified in-game why the Cherishing Fingers sorcery is atop Yuri's grave, but I'm under the impression that it has some connection to do with the underground tunnels leading up to the Lands Between from Metyr's birthing grounds. But be sure to let me know in the comments section what you guys think about this. Number 3. Midra, the Lord of Frenzied Flame. Now, to fully understand the lore behind Midra, we must first learn the lore behind the Lord of Frenzied Flame. Otherwise known as the Lord of Chaos, it was prophesied that a messiah-like figure embodying the Frenzied Flame would return one day to the Lands Between, granting its followers salvation, by promising to rid them of all their sins, torment, and curses, melting it all away. It's said that a chosen few, who are stricken with madness, are capable of transforming into the Lord of Frenzied Flame after their death, with the strength of its form varying based on who the original host was. It's my understanding that the Lord of Frenzied Flame can appear inside of a host, even if they don't want him to, and can even force the death of the host within a moment's notice to force the transformation. Hey, I didn't consent to that! When the Tarnished traveled through the Abyssal Woods, ending up at Midra's manse, they're met with warnings and illusions trying to stop the Tarnished from progressing through the mansion. It's my understanding that many years ago, that Midra attempted to become the Lord of Frenzied Flame, hoping his lord would have him as his chosen, but ultimately wasn't considered strong enough and failed. It's believed that early on in life, that Midra committed a great sin of some kind, thus leading to him getting impaled with the Great Sword of Damnation atop of his head, where its golden barbs can be seen protruding throughout his entire body and causing eternal pain and agony. Midra had hopes that the Lord of Frenzied Flame would eventually free him of his past sins, and even his partner Nanaya encouraged Midra to endure this pain. Since the Tarnished ignored Midra's warnings to stay away, they eventually met face to face, with Midra attempting to kill the Tarnished, but was pathetically defeated in mere seconds. Having endured enough pain and suffering, Midra asked the Lord of Frenzied Flame to once again take his body, leading to Midra ripping off his own head and pulling the Great Sword of Damnation out of his own body, transforming him into the Lord of Frenzied Flame. And honestly, it's my favorite transformation in the entire game. It's said that these types of transformations are born from unspeakable torment and despair, and it even changes the way the prior host moves, embodying an entirely different entity now, with Midra now having a black hole where his face used to be, with orange and yellow flames spewing from the center of it. Combat-wise, Midra used the Great Sword of Damnation that was lodged throughout his entire body to try and defeat the Tarnished as he flies through the air, but was eventually defeated once again. It's said that those stricken with madness think the Lord of Frenzied Flame is some kind of savior, but to everybody else, he's the harbinger of insanity and death, aka Elden Ring's Antichrist. Now, depending on what ending you choose at the end of the game, Rellana tells the Tarnished when trying to obtain the Lord of Frenzied Flame ending that they're actually no lord at all, at least not to our understanding of the word, because whatever land they would preside over would eventually be lifeless and engulfed in flames. Number 2. Promised Consort Radahn / Radahn, Consort of Miquella. Radahn is one of the 3 children of Rellana, Queen of the Full Moon, and Radahn of the Golden Order, with Radahn taken more from his father's side of the family, from the way that he fights, all the way to his red hair. Now, to fully understand the lore behind Promised Consort Radahn, we must first talk about Queen Marika the Eternal, and Godfrey, the first Elden Lord. Queen Marika and her Golden Order wanted to reunite the Lands Between, effectively putting the entirety of the Lands Between at war with each other, all of which were eventually won and led by her husband Godfrey the first Elden Lord, but wasn't necessarily praised as you would think for his actions. The Golden Order congratulated Godfrey by stripping him of his Elden Lord status and banishing him from the Lands Between with his army. After losing her husband Godfrey, Queen Marika put her focus on getting the Carian royal family to join the Golden Order next, making Radahn her new husband. Which is weird, because Radahn technically is Marika, but I'm just going to assume that their spirits share the same body, since they're gods, and by default, making all of Radahn and Rellana's children demigods, including Radahn. It's even said, when Radahn was young, that he admired Godfrey so much that he decorated his armor with Godfrey's signature animal, the lion. And as you could see, Radahn had the drip. Over time, Radahn began to grow in size and muscle. He became so big that he wasn't even able to ride his favorite horse anymore, Leonard, whom he loved very much. To fix this problem, Radahn learned gravitational magic and techniques under the same Alabaster Lord who taught Commander Gaius, someone that Radahn had a friendly rivalry with growing up. It's even said that Radahn became so good at gravity magic that he was able to stop the stars in their place, with many thinking that this could have been because Radahn wanted to stop Ranni the Witch's path to godhood, acting on Miquella's behalf, which would technically make Miquella a hater. Miquella the Kind can be seen asking Radahn in a flashback if Radahn would be his promised consort, and is technically never confirmed, but if Radahn agreed in this instance, then it makes sense why Radahn would help Miquella hinder Ranni's ascent to godhood. Since Miquella planned on becoming a god, it would make sense that he would make stopping any other Empyreans a priority. Now, fast forwarding in time, we bring ourselves to an event called the Shattering, where Queen Marika breaks the Elden Ring, imprisoning her and Radahn inside the Erdtree, since they're technically the same person and all, and leaving the throne empty, since shattering the Elden Ring was considered an ultimate sin. Afterwards, all of Marika's children became Shardbearers, having each inherited a fragment of the Elden Ring, which eventually led to fighting amongst the Shardbearers for the throne, corrupting the Golden Order, leading us to the part in the base game where we meet Dark Scourge Radahn. He's now the general of the Redmane Knights, which are considered one of the strongest armies in the Lands Between, and are housed at Radahn's Redmane Castle. Within Radahn's ranks was Ogha, who helped Radahn sharpen his gravitational skills, and Castellan Jaren, one of Radahn's old friends from his Caria Manor days, and a step-in general at times when Radahn needed time away from his duties. Pretty much what you would call a ride or die. Once the Battle of the Shardbearers was reaching its close though, there was only two of Marika's children left fighting, Radahn and Malenia, the Blade of Miquella, eventually leading to the Battle of Caelid Wilds. Radahn ultimately lost that day to Malenia when she unleashed the Scarlet Rot, tainting Radahn's land and mind for all of eternity. But right before Malenia unleashed the Scarlet Aeonia flower, Radahn was badly beaten, with spears and arrows covering his entire body. But Radahn had Malenia on her back foot, seemingly a mere seconds away from besting Malenia, when she leaned into Radahn's ear and whispered one phrase, "Miquella awaits thee, O promised consort," which can be seen on the Young Lion set in-game, leading to a huge revelation at the end of Shadow of the Erdtree. It's my understanding that Miquella and Malenia had planned to attack the Caelid Wilds in hopes of killing Radahn and resurrecting him again in the Lands of Shadow. Miquella wanted to become a god, and in order to do that, a god needs a lord. There was one huge problem though. Radahn got affected by the Scarlet Rot, and was effectively turned into a mindless zombie, doomed to wander the Caelid Desert for all of eternity. They say that every year at Redmane Castle, Castel and Jaren would hold the Radahn Festival, where brave warriors would try and kill Radahn, trying to free him from the Rot and pass him on, with the Tarnished eventually helping defeat Starscourge Radahn, thus making the stars that Radahn stopped on behalf of Miquella to stop Ranni's descent to godhood to get put back in motion. With Radahn finally dead, Miquella could finally resurrect Radahn now. The only thing that he was missing was a body. After the Tarnished found Mohgwyn Palace and defeated Mohg, the Lord of Blood, it's found out by Sir Anbach, a former pureblood knight and servant of Mohg's, that Mohg was under Miquella's trance the entire time, and was actively trying to reincarnate Miquella, but continued to fail, leading to Miquella to get his followers, led by Needle Knight Lita, to grab Mohg's body and use it to reincarnate Radahn in the Lands of Shadow, as Miquella's promised consort. It's stated in-game that Miquella the Kind wanted to go on a 1,000-year voyage, guided by compassion to make the world a gentler place, regardless of how he obtained these ends. Number 1. Messmer the Impaler / Base Serpent Messmer. The son of Queen Marika the Eternal, who was born cursed with a dark and malevolent serpent inside of him, which was called the Abyssal Serpent, and threatened to subdue him. It's my understanding that out of fear of it being released, that Queen Marika was able to contain the serpent by removing one of Messmer's eyes and replacing it with the Seal of Grace, hoping to stop the serpent from consuming Messmer from the inside. Now, jumping forward in time many years before the Shattering, and we're met with Messmer the Impaler, waging wars against Queen Marika's oppositions on Marika's behalf, and was said to be a loyal follower and warlord under Marika's rule. It's my understanding that since the people of the Lands of Shadow were without the light of grace, that Messmer and his army used Messmer's magical flame to burn everything in their path on Queen Marika's behalf, eventually ending with the burning of Ballarat Tower settlement and the slaughter of its people, where Messmer would impale many of his victims on pikes, earning the nickname of the Impaler. Shortly afterwards, Messmer the Impaler had learned that Queen Marika had actually set him up. She deliberately let Messmer take the fall for the burning of Ballarat Tower, and afterwards separated herself from him, which led to Messmer becoming the most hated individual in the Lands of Shadow, and it's even said that they wiped his name from the history of the Lands Between entirely. As a result of this, Messmer got banished to the Lands of Shadow, and grew to hate Queen Marika and everything that represents her, leading to him opposing the Golden Order and seeking to destroy everything in Queen Marika's name. Regardless of Messmer's hatred for Queen Marika though, he still held on to some sort of attachment that she would in fact return to him one day, while he lived out the rest of his days inside the Shadow Keep. Some notable allies within Messmer's ranks were Commander Gaius, who was the leader of Messmer's ground forces in the Lands of Shadow, and was close friends with Messmer. Rellana, Twin Moon Knight, who was Messmer's love interest, who helped him fortify the Shadow Keep by inhabiting neighboring castle structures, and Black Knight Commander, Andreas, as well as Black Knight Captain Ho, who were Messmer's brothers in arms, but eventually rebelled against the Shadow Keep and Messmer's ground forces upon realizing Messmer's serpentine nature. Yeah, that boy is a snake. Once Messmer realized that a Tarnished champion was invading the Shadow Keep in an effort to obtain his kindling, he took it upon himself to continue the purge on behalf of Queen Marika by attempting to defeat the Tarnished, but was ultimately bested. In an effort to reclaim the upper hand, Messmer the Impaler ripped out Marika's Seal of Grace and unleashed the power of the Abyssal Serpent, allowing Messmer to transform at will into the Base Serpent. Following the fight between the two warriors, Messmer used his final breath to curse Queen Marika, confirming that he was indeed forsaken by his dear mother. Yeah, that's right. I'm calling CPS on all of you guys. One final thing I'd like to add though, refers to Messmer's winged serpents, as seen on his helmet. They're based on Messmer's actual winged serpents, that's been Messmer's constant companions throughout his entire life, stating on Messmer's helm in game, that the winged serpents were there when Queen Marika sealed away the base serpent inside of Messmer, and when he decided to destroy the Seal of Grace, transforming him into the base serpent, stating that collectively, Messmer and the winged serpents accepted Messmer's fate by becoming the base serpent, and allowing it to consume him. Now thank you guys so much if you stayed the entire time. Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree bosses are bullies, making the community so insecure that they went ahead and cried to Daddy Miyazaki, leading to huge nerfs, combat-wise. Now whether that made the game better or worse, I don't know. I guess that's for y'all to decide. Kinda making our community have some lore of its own. And as always, huge shout out to all the Elden Ring wikis out there. They're the reason why I was able to research things outside the game, beyond item descriptions. Now let me know in the comment section what you guys think about this. Where would you guys have ranked these bosses? Which boss in Shadow of the Erdtree is your personal favorite? And if you guys would like a part 2 to this, wait, that's a part 1? Technically that's part 1, but I mean, whatever. If y'all would like a part 2 to this video, where I go over Elden Ring's base game bosses, then be sure to let me know in the comment section. Now remember to like, comment, subscribe, do anything you guys can to help me. I am just one guy, and I make these videos because it is my passion. So thank you very much, have a nice day. This has been Drew Spacely. Peace. We practiced this over and over again. We're gonna get it this time. We're gonna get it this time. Shit. Sorry. One more thing. I wasted a lot of time and energy making this video right here. So please, go check it out.